We got a smile from ear to ear because we're about to start Legal AF at the midweek. Dina Doll sitting in for Karen Freeman Ignifilo, my regular podcast partner. And Dina's my regular podcast partner on Unprecedented, our Supreme Court podcast over on Legal AF YouTube, and is now hosting Monday night along with Lisa Graves, a new night that we've opened up. You've asked for it. We brought it. Legal AF live Monday nights, 5 p.m. on the Legal AF YouTube channel. Hi, Dina.
Great to see you. So excited to be here.
Thanks for, well, I say thanks to fill it in, but it's our pleasure to have you here and to brief our audience. Let's kick it off. Number of things to talk about that have happened in the last hour, 2 hours before we got on the air. We'll talk about the slush fund. In yesterday's Todd Blanche sworn testimony is like old news already. We got a first lawsuit that's been filed to stop it. We've got the Senate and the House considering ways to stop it. There seems to be no political will to let Donald Trump walk away from $100 million in tax liability. We've got the resignation of the general counsel of the Treasury Department rather than participate in possibly an illegal wipeout of Donald Trump's tax liability. And we got the first lawsuit filed by a couple of Jan 6 officers, who, as always, have stepped forward to protect and defend the line and democracy. But theirs is not the last lawsuit. There'll be multiple lawsuits about this. And something that happened just as we came on the air, where the Senate threw up their hands and said, we're not funding the ballroom. Now, that in and of itself is a devastating blow to Donald Trump's ego and his golden ballroom. They're not going to take $1 billion and pay for security and all the harden the facility and all that bullshit. But what does it mean? I want to ask you this question. It's rhetorical now, but I'll come back and ask you. What does it mean to the political will in the Senate to approve or to kill the $1.776 billion slush fund? If from what I'm hearing on Capitol Hill, there is no support for this. Nobody's like clapping. Nobody's saying great idea politically, including Republicans. So let's try to figure out, read the tea leaves. If the ballroom got killed, what that may portend for the slush fund. The lawsuit we'll talk about. Then we got to pick up on something that we covered a few months ago. Only the first president to ever be indicted for stealing presidential records would then try, by way of a White House memo, declare that they don't have to save anything because the Presidential Records Act can't apply to them because they're a separate branch of government. We were like, what? We're just gonna pull up a giant incinerator and incinerate the whole Trump administration documents at the end? They're not the people's papers? I thought they were the people's papers. And now we got Judge Bates, who's issued a new preliminary injunction, which is right around what we thought would happen. So I want to talk about that. And so much more as we wait on pins and needles for things like the Supreme Court's final rulings as they round out their year. And then we had an election night in America, which the Republicans are saying represents the power and the muscle flex for Donald Trump. But does it? And what does it mean for the general election, given Donald Trump's abysmally, historically low polling numbers, which get every day there's a new announcement, Dina, of a poll. It gets lower and lower. We're going to see how low this is going to go before just several months from now, before the midterms. But I'm so glad you're here. Let's open the show. Let's kick it off with what you've observed. Update our audience from your perspective about the things that you found interesting about this, as we peel the onion, about the slush fund, the settlement agreement, the attempt to take away tax exposure and liability for the Trump family. Well, let's start with all of that and testimony that Blanche gave before he let the American people know that he was going to absolve Donald Trump of tax liability. He didn't tell that to the senators now, did he?
You know, from a legal perspective, this is a legal show, right? This is one of the most stunning stories. Todd Blanche, in a typical situation, committed malpractice here, would be disbarred. In any other situation, he was sued for basically created a $1 billion fund without filing one motion in the case. That's stunning. Not only did he not file a motion, he was given an opportunity on a cake platter to get it dismissed by Judge Kathleen Williams, who said, I don't think that I even have a case here. Go ahead and, both sides tell me whether or not I should or should not take this case. Any defense lawyer, any lawyer, we're talking about like the bare minimum of a qualified, competent lawyer would have taken that opportunity and run with it. Of course, the deadline was May 20th. So instead, Todd Blanche, acting really as Trump's personal attorney and not as our attorney, rushed this settlement. So really just the malpractice. His job, whether or not he wants to believe it or not, is representing the American people. He was told to step aside, that there was going to be a conflict of interest. He was given a memo, according to the New York Times, by career lawyers within the IRS, laying out all of the defenses, including statute of limitations, to get this dismissed, on top of Judge Kathleen Williams questioning whether or not there was even a real case or controversy since Trump was suing himself. He had so many opportunities to try to file one motion in this case. And without filing one motion, he handed over more than $1 billion to what appears to be January 6th insurrectionists. And to your point, his testimony was in front of Congress was just atrocious, trying to act as if he has no idea whether or not the money will eventually end up in the hands of January 6th insurrectionists, despite the fact he's going to be the one appointing the people on the commission who's going to be doling out the funds. Clearly, Todd Blanche here acting as Trump's personal attorney. And then we can get into the audits, which in itself, as you said, there could be worth more than $100 million. IRS policy is to audit every president and vice president. That has been the policy for years. So you get a sense of how extraordinary it is that Trump is going to be getting, and not just Trump, his sons, his businesses, his affiliates are going to be getting this favor of permanently never being audited. And of course, there is even that existing audit. Self-dealing to such an extent, it is hard to comprehend, all wrapped up as if somehow it has to do with this frivolous, baseless lawsuit. And unfortunately, these Capitol police officers who again and again have had to speak out against the lies coming from Trump and Republicans trying to rewrite January 6th are having to stand up. Thankfully, they have the ability to stand up against the slush fund, but they shouldn't have to. Really, we shouldn't be in this position.
Absolutely. And then you've got the way that Todd Blanche did it, in using a statute that relates to when an attorney general can stop an audit. Because at the core, I no longer think this was about a $10 billion lawsuit or even a slush fund. I think this was about Donald Trump having at the top of his checklist of things left to do before he's powerless was to get himself out from under that audit. The audit he's been under since 2010, about a $75 million or so refund that he received, his companies received, and a tax loss of several $1 billion about two projects that the IRS was challenging. And it's interesting that they enter the settlement. There's no mention of Donald Trump's family getting this tax break. Then the press happens. And then the next day, after Todd Blanche steps off of the Senate, out of the Senate hot chair, he posts a one-paragraph amendment to the settlement, which he doesn't call an amendment to the settlement, which adds a new provision waiving forever the tax liability and audit against the Trump administration, of Trump individually. This is the audit that Trump used as an excuse for decades not to reveal his tax returns. I'd love to reveal them, everybody, but I'm under an audit. And then here you go. You've got this May 19th memo, a day late, but hundreds of millions of dollars not short, letting them off the hook. This is what's sticking in the craw of Congress and the senators, even the MAGA ones. And I'm not sure there's political will for this. First of all, you've got the now former general counsel for the Treasury Department. And I just had Matt Platkin, former attorney general for New Jersey, who's now in private practice with lawsuits concerning these issues. He came up with a great theory, which is The guy stays around, holds his nose, and lets the settlement get announced. But as soon as Blanche wants to now go to step 2 and violate a criminal statute about when an audit can be interfered with, which I believe he's interfered with on behalf of Trump, that's a bridge too far, even for this general counsel, and he resigns because it's in that order, okay? Then you have all of these open challenges that will come in the lawsuits we'll talk about next, because if Blanche doesn't have the power under this certain statute that allows him to interfere with audits, if he doesn't have that power, then that aspect of the settlement goes out the window. And if he doesn't have the power as the head of the Department of Justice to set up a settlement fund related to the Internal Revenue Service, completely different agency, think about the parties that were involved in the lawsuit. It's Trump v. IRS. Let's put aside for a minute that they're on the same side and he controls them, and it's a collusive conspiratorial suit with no adversary parties. Let's put all of that aside for a moment. Okay, got that. All right. Department of Justice isn't a party. Department of Justice at best would be the lawyers for the Internal Revenue Service. So then to settle this case, Trump has his Department of Justice, who has an anti-weaponization committee, set up a fund that's going to be funded by the IRS in order to administer. How does he have the power to do that? How does Blanche have the power to order the Treasury to put taxpayer dollars into a fund under his direction in a case that he's not even a party to? So all the things we just outlined are going to be parts of lawsuits. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think at least another 2 filed before Memorial Day. You think fireworks only get fired in federal holidays like 4th of July? Wait till Memorial Day. So we're going to talk about now. I'm going to turn to the new suit, first of its kind, filed by officers Dunn and Hodges. There they are. Hodges trapped. We all remember that picture. Trapped inside the revolving door, his life being crushed out of him. And they've been very poignant in their testimony about the post-traumatic stress disorder they have suffered. And I love their angle. And the angle for their lawsuit is Trump is funding terrorists. Trump is funding insurrectionists because he's giving the money to the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all the bad guys that attacked our rule of law. And therefore, he should be stopped. And they made their case on a very narrow plank of the Administrative Procedures Act, of arguing that things are outside statutory power, asking for a declaratory judgment. They didn't touch the obvious constitutional issues, but they do kind of get to the heart of the matter, but also bring it forward, right, with this human aspect of Trump's funding terrorists. At the same time, he's trying to put the Southern Poverty Law Center out of business for breaking up terrorist organizations and allegedly funding them. He's funding them with this fund. What did you make of the lawsuit?
Absolutely. And to your point about, the person who signed this agreement was the newly created chief executive officer of the IRS. That role did not exist before Trump. And that person was not confirmed by the Senate. That's the person who signed it because, as you said, the general counsel stepped down. Nobody else really probably wanted their name on this. And they had to create it through this sham settlement because of the fact that there is no legislative statutory authority for it. It's interesting because I know the executive order was pointed to a few times. Trump put out an executive order last year that said that agencies had to follow his definition of the law. And both Judge Kathleen Williams cited that, actually saying this is why there's not a real case for controversy, because does this mean the IRS has to follow Trump's definition of the law? It was also cited in this new lawsuit as well. But Trump, in one of the press conferences, says that he didn't know about this settlement, which is interesting because if he didn't, of course he's lying about that. But that you could take that quote as evidence to say that the Department of Justice wasn't, or the IRS wasn't having to follow his definition of it because he didn't know what the definition was. They have not even a shred of legal justification for the slush fund. The fact that it's some sort of settlement of a civil suit is a complete sham. And then there's no statutory or now even any executive order that gives them any kind of basis for this fund. But to your point about it funding terrorists, Trump doesn't do anything out of loyalty. I do not believe he is giving them this money 6 months before the midterms as a way to thank them for what they did on January 6th. He only does something if it is going to serve him right now. I just interviewed Officer Michael Fanone to ask him about this slush fund from Midas Touch. And he really believes that political violence is going to be part of all of our elections. It scares me that he's wanting to fund insurrectionists 6 months before the midterms, where he's already talked about how we should have standing armies to make sure the right people are voting because his poll numbers are so low. They're doing all this redistricting to get the vote. And that lawsuit really captures it. The officers' lawsuit really captures it. They said that they have been threatened, to this day threatened, and they have been injured. And they point out the fact that they believe that this is going to just encourage the insurrectionists to commit more political violence. And I believe that is the purpose of this.
Tomorrow, I'm going to have with me the lawyers who filed this lawsuit. They're coming on Public Integrity to brief our audience about what the next steps are and how they collaborate with what's obviously going to be a series of other filings. I don't know if it's going to be members of the House, like the 93 that joined together to file an amicus brief in Miami, or it's going to be others. But there's other aspects. It all leads, all the roads up the mountain all lead to the same place in blocking the fund, blocking the funding of the fund, blocking the erasure of Donald Trump's tax exposure. But they'll come at it from slightly different angles, and perhaps in with different judges. They'll all be in D.C. federal court, I'm sure. I'm not sure which judges yet. Do we know which? Maybe we'll look it up while we're doing the show tonight. What judge has been assigned to this particular case? I'll have those lawyers on and ask them those questions. Let me read to you from their filing. This is paragraph 1. In the most brazen act of presidential corruption this century. That's saying a lot for this guy. President Donald J. Trump has created a taxpayer-funded slush fund to finance the insurrectionists and the paramilitary groups that commit violence in his name, and that it's a sham. They go on to say that the fund endangers the lives and safety of plaintiffs Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges, officers who defended the Capitol on Jan 6th in 2 ways. By its very existence, the fund encourages those who enacted violence in the president's name to continue to do so. They face credible threats of death and violence on a regular basis. Second, if allowed to begin making payments, the fund will directly finance the violent operations of rioters, paramilitary, and their supporters who threaten plaintiffs' lives and continue to do so. And then they had this line, among many, paragraph 12. Dunn and Hodges did not back down on Jan 6th. They held the line to defend democracy and the rule of law. They bring this case to do so again. There's just a certain gravitas that comes from these two talking about the funding and refunding and reanimating of these groups that by any account should be completely out of business with their leadership in jail. And it would be under any other sane administration that committed to the rule of law and democracy. And yet today we're talking about, let's give them a check for $1 million to get back on their feet. What do you think?
It's so disturbing. It's like the Capitol police officers did their job so well that the Republican members of Congress are willing to let Trump pardon them and now potentially pay them. Because if the Capitol officers hadn't done their job that well, members of Congress would have been beaten as severely as those officers. And the fact that these Republican Congress members are willing to have allowed those officers to protect them and don't have the decency to have stood up against the pardons. Because honestly, the pardons were bad enough. I mean, the fact that we're even to the point we're talking about getting them paid is shocking. The fact that they had all the constitutional protections afforded them as a criminal defendant and were still convicted and yet pardoned without a peep from these weak Republican congresspeople who had the luxury of not getting hurt that day because men and women put their bodies on the line for them is just, it's a shame on this country that we have, I don't think, even barely reconciled with. It is really disturbing. And I think you're right. You alluded to in the beginning that perhaps the slush fund to pay insurrectionists will be a step too far for these Republican Congress people. But it is just the fact that this is even on the table. It shows really how the kind of authoritarian figure Trump wants to be.
Well, I mean, there's that old saying after you hear a description of something, sounds like a cult. And it sounds like a cult when the Democrats, who are making great political hay out of this, as they should, to pin this tail directly on this donkey, they say, well, let's see if we can reach common ground. Can we pass an amendment that convicted child sex abusers can't make application for the fund? Voted down by the Republicans. Can we pass an amendment that people convicted of or indicted for violently attacking law enforcement can't make application? Voted down. And every one of these is going to be a new ad against these Republicans. That's why they hate this. They hated the ballroom, and they killed that $1 billion hot potato that Donald Trump threw at them. Here you go. I need $1 billion now for the free ballroom. They were like, yeah, no. During a national discussion about an administration that where affordability has fallen on deaf ears, looking callous, we're not going to give $1 billion for a golden ballroom. I think that factors in here, because if there's no political will, one thing you can say that unifies all MAGA in the House and the Senate is that they're cowards and they're worried about their political hides. And if they can't get this passed and don't want to pass it, as we reported it coming on the air, why does Trump think that they're not going to block his weaponization fund? They didn't even remember when we reported on 3 months ago when they were going to have a little thing in the big, beautiful bill to give $50 million or some amount of money to pay back the Lindsey Grahams of the world and Congress people who incurred legal expenses related to the Jan 6 investigation because they were cooperating with the insurrectionists. That got killed. So now, so Trump's takeaway from that was, well, 50 million didn't work. I'll go for a 1.776 billion. I don't get it.
No, we shouldn't get it because, like I said from the start, this is beyond any legal, political, and that's why it's scary. We have the Department of Justice, who is meant to keep us safe, wanting to go pay criminals who beat and killed officers and doing this right before another election. We should be disturbed. We should be scared. And it's not just Trump. It's Todd Blanche. The fact that like to your point, to Congress, he wouldn't even rule out paying out of this fund somebody who was convicted of violence that day. This is where we're at, and it is stunning. There are a few stories that we have discussed that are as stunning as this one to me, because there is, like, you can't even try to spin your way out of it. And the fact that it is politically even a step too far for a lot of Republicans, and Trump still doing that, is alarming.
I think we have a new tagline for midweek edition of Legal AF. It can go on mugs and t-shirts. Midweek Legal AF, you'll be stunned. Right?
I know. I always think I'm not going to be surprised. And then there's like a further level of depravity. Yeah. This to me is a 5-alarm fire, because Trump tends to know where his party, I think, is willing to go and not go. And this is so extreme, paying the Proud Boys, essentially.
Yeah.
This sounds to me like a private army he's trying to coalesce here.
Right. And I think even the Republicans like Thune realize that if they don't draw the line in the sand here, this could lead to a limitless president where he has unlimited constitutional power to do anything, put money in his pocket, waive his own debts, waive his own tax. This may be, I know, you're always wondering what is the last straw, even for MAGA. And we may have reached it here. And for the Department of Justice. I mean, there should be calls for Todd Blanche to resign. If Merrick Garland gave that performance and did these things, there'd be calls for him by the Republicans to immediately resign. But instead, no, we just have, the communications director for Donald Trump, relishing in the fact that Trump made his entire party run hard to the right yesterday. And he's like, F around and find out. Yep, that's what I'm going to say on my official White House account. I'm like, I don't know how that helps you in the general election to make everybody a mini Trumper, and we're going to see. I think there is a silver lining to what happened yesterday. The harder right these candidates for the Republicans have to run to appease Donald Trump, the more they're out of lockstep with the American people and candidates who all they have to do is just step ever so slightly to the left and to the center to gain the votes. We haven't heard the last of Massey in Kentucky. First of all, Trump just created a couple of new Tom Tillises who are going to be able to completely run around unfettered from now until they're out of office, opposing the Trump administration without any repercussions. And Massey may run as an independent, splitting the vote and maybe grabbing the seat in Kentucky, especially if this is a wave election. So we're going to cover all that and so much more. When we come back, I want to talk about Judge Bates's new ruling about presidential records. We'll talk about the ballroom and anything else that pops into our minds. You're here on Legal AF, the podcast, the Webby award-winning Legal AF podcast. We swept the Webbies. You might be wondering, where are the Webbies? You have to order them from the Webby company. you get one free.
Nothing is free, right?
Yeah, I know. Nothing's free, not even the award you win. And then I'll put it here on this little podium here. People will get to see it. That's one. Then, this show sits, or the YouTube channel sits on this show. We've got a YouTube channel, 12 videos a day, called Legal AF YouTube. You may not have heard of it. Hopefully you have. Come over and help us pass the 1.2 million subscriber base. We're getting there. We're close. If you think you're subscribed, I don't think you are. I think you should go check. Because if everybody was subscribed who told me they're subscribed, we'd have 3 million already. And if we just got 10% of our viewership to subscribe, which is not a huge number, I'd even take 5%. We'd beat the Midas brothers. I'm not competitive. I'm just stating the obvious.
Sure, you're not.
But take a moment and hit the free subscribe. Well, they're my partners over there too. They don't care.
I know.
So hit the free subscribe button there as well. Then we've got Legal AF Substack. You'll see writings and reportings by Dina Doll. I do a live report every day, including today, and a bunch of other content you can't find anywhere else. Legal AF Substack. So we got two. There it is. We got two things going on there, and then we've got our sponsors that have been with us. Some of them have been with us from the very beginning, the last 6 years. Some of them are brand new, all curated and vetted by a combination of Jordy and me, the other hosts. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and finish the show. So here's our sponsors. Magic Spoon is basically the grown-up version of your favorite childhood cereal. All those nostalgic flavors you remember, but packed with protein. I've been loving the fruity and peanut butter flavors lately, and they've also got frosted, cocoa, cinnamon crunch, and more. Plus, they just launched new marshmallow flavors, classic marshmallow and s'mores, both with real marshmallows and 2 grams of sugar that really bring back those childhood cereal vibes. Each serving packs 12 to 14 grams of protein, and it's great anytime, breakfast, post-workout, or a late-night snack. They also make Magic Spoon treats, which are crispy, airy, protein-packed snack bars that taste like a treat. Look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or at your nearest grocery store. And if you want to try something new, check out Magic Spoon's protein pastries. They're packed with protein and taste like the nostalgic toaster pastries you grew up with, but without all the sugar. You can get $5 off your next order including the protein pastries at magicspoon.com/legalaf. That's magicspoon.com/legalaf for $5 off. Oh, Delete Me? It makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. As someone with an active online presence, privacy is really important to me. There's just so much personal information out there. And even if you haven't experienced identity theft or harassment yourself, you probably know somebody who has. That's why I like Delete Me. They do all the hard work of wiping your and your family's personal information from data broker websites. And they keep working in the background, constantly monitoring and removing the information you don't want online. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/legalaf and use promo code legalaf at checkout. But the only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/legalaf and then use code legalaf at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/legalaf, code legal AF. Welcome back to Legal AF. At the midweek, we got Dina Doll sitting in for KFA and Michael Popok. So when things are going terribly, Dina, for a president, when every other day a new set of polling numbers come out, whether it's the guy on CNN that Donald Trump is having a bromance with, Harry Enton is like, this are the most abysmal numbers in the history of the presidency. And then they stop Trump and Trump's like, I like that guy. Like, are you following the storyline here, Grandpa?
Seriously.
So, and then you got the silver bullet memo comes out. You got New York Times and Siena poll, Ipso poll. And they're competing to see who's going to report the lowest number for Donald Trump. With the margin of error, he's in the 20s in favorability. And his takeaway from that is they love me. They can't get enough of me, as the voters can't run further away from him. And if you plug all these numbers in, if you plug all these numbers in, Dina, thank you, then you come to the inexorable conclusion that he's going to lose the House and likely the Senate. I mean, you've got right direction, wrong direction approval numbers, which are horrendously low. You have the lowest consumer confidence index in history in 50 years. There's a lot of recessions that were in there and something called COVID. Mm-hmm. You've got that. You've got joblessness, no jobs being created by this economy. Hyperinflation already started. Double gas prices, which people hate for good reason because it ends up being a tax on everybody. Any tax refund you might have gotten is going up in smoke at the gas pump. You plug all of that in, and it's a 40 to 50 seat advantage for the Democrats. I mean, there's polling out that shows that a random Democrat with no name, a no-name Democrat versus a no-name Republican in a congressional seat, the no-name Democrat wins by 11 points. We haven't even done platform. We haven't even done policies. We haven't even done the "do you want to have a beer with me" test. It's just on no name. Mm-hmm. And Trump knows it, which is why we're seeing, you and I and others I've interviewed are starting everything now with this breathless. It's unprecedented. It is stunning. It's because he's running out of time. And he knows he's running out of time. I compared it on The Intersection last night to one of those game shows where they lock you win a chance in 20 minutes to grab whatever you can inside of a department store or a toy store or whatever it is, right? You get a shopping cart. Well, okay, he's going out of business. He's trying to stuff as many dollars in his pocket and get as much benefit as possible before he's made completely powerless at the midterms. So all of this whistling past the graveyard, I think we're going to win. I just controlled the primaries. This guy lost because I said so. It's all hyperbolic bullshit that's not going to help him in the electoral races. And then when he has a bad news cycle, which is like every third hour, he then pushes a button somewhere, and Todd Blanche and his Department of Justice file or indict and do something else to steal the news story, which is why we waited till like the second half of the show instead of leading with Raul Castro of Cuba. Like, who gives a flying fuck about Raul Castro of Cuba? Sorry, my Cuban American friends, but I don't want to indict Fidel Castro any longer either. So why don't you pick up the pieces from what got announced today and why you think it got announced today by a beleaguered Todd Blanche?
The indictment of Castro, basically. Yes. So the 94-year-old, and I think that in itself is the detail of why this is a distraction. Reminds me a lot of how they celebrated about the killing of the Iranian leader, who was also probably going to pass away at any moment. But essentially, they indicted Raul Castro for a 1996. They took down a plane that had 3 American citizens and a green card holder, and we said that it was outside Cuban airspace. Cuba had always alleged that this was a terrorist group that they took out on the plane, but they have decided to indict him today. Well, actually, it was just unsealed today. They indicted him back in April. He is not the current leader of Cuba, but he is the power still. He's seen as the power still behind the throne. Although, of course, here again, I'm going to say he's 94 years old. So his physical condition, we really have no idea. So it seems very much like a show. But Todd Blanche has said this is not just some sort of show indictment. We basically plan on bringing him to justice. Does that mean they're going to go and capture him like Maduro and bring him here to the soil? Who knows? But at this point, it sounds like we know that Rubio and Trump have been talking quite a bit about invading and taking over Cuba. There's that humanitarian crisis unfolding in Cuba as a result of really all the sanctions that we are having there to try to kind of force a regime change. But for me, the biggest takeaway here was his age. At this point, even if you were to prosecute a 94-year-old man, I don't know how much power he really has at this point anymore.
Yeah, now let me give it from a Miami perspective.
Yes, please.
Right? All right. Yeah. And I've got former law partners that represented some of these people who were shot down in civil cases against the Cuban government. I don't have any insider knowledge, but I know those people. And I know what it means to the Cuban American population and the Cuban population in Miami. And think about where they chose to announce the indictment, Dina, in front of the Freedom Tower. Freedom Tower is not only the Ellis Island on Biscayne Boulevard in downtown Miami for the Cuban population, where they came through for immigration status, but it sits directly next to the 2.63 acre plot of land that Donald Trump has gotten donated by the state of Florida for his Trump Library Convention Center casino hotel thing, whatever that's supposed to be, a 50-tower monstrosity where he stole $300 million from a local university because they gave him the property for free. There's a lawsuit about that's pending down here in Miami related to the violation of the emoluments clause. So and if you take a wide enough lens with the indictment announcement, you can see the parking lot where he wants to build that. That's one. He's trying to curry favor and shore up his political support. This has nothing to do with 94-year-old Raul Castro. As you said earlier, it's always about Trump. Trump just watched Eileen Higgins, the mayor of Miami, Democrat, first Democrat in 30 years, first woman ever, and beat the MAGA pick by him, Trump, and Ron DeSantis by 14 points. Okay, to win the mayoralty of the city of Miami. So just to be clear, there's a county that used to be called Dade County, now Miami-Dade County, and there's a county mayor. She's a Democrat. There is a city mayor who is now a Democrat, first time in 30 years and first woman ever. And she won by a lot. Like she so crushingly crushed the MAGA guy she was running against, that he conceded like within a second of the race being called and said, what a great race. Anyway, so if he's got a hope to win and for MAGA to ever win again in Florida, they've got to secure that base in Miami. So this is a complete pandering to a Cuban American, which is 70% of Miami-Dade County, a Cuban American population who cheered wildly, according to local reports, when the indictment was announced, because the symbolism of this 94-year-old. When Castro, his brother, died, it was like a national holiday in Florida, in Miami. I live within blocks of the Cuban exile community on Calle Ocho, which is kind of runs up against Coral Gables where I live. And so I get it. So if you think this was nothing more than we're having a slow news cycle, and they've been getting pressure from Marco Rubio, used to be the senator down here, and others, I'm sure, including my former law partners, to bring Raul Castro before he dies to justice. Now, look, I'm not against octogenarians and septuagenarians and nonagenarians being brought to justice, okay? I was very supportive of Elie Wiesel and everybody who were Nazi hunters chasing after, including some that didn't get put on the stand until they were in their 90s and brought to justice. So I don't want to say that justice has a time limit or a statute of limitations, but you also have to put this in the political context that you and I just did. And that's one thing I get to bring here, of being a longtime resident in Miami and practicing law down here and being a part of this community, is I see the political tambourine for what it is. And I think that's what we really just saw. To people who don't live down here, it's like, that's interesting, Raul Castro was just indicted. And I'm like, no, this is to shore up the votes. This is to get Spanish language radio, a buzzing down, and then it can roll into the midterm elections for the candidates. I'm sure every congressional candidate for Republican was at that press conference, because that they got to show their bona fides. Was Marco Rubio there? He had to have been, right?
I would think. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the reporting is. I think Marco is probably there because, he's been trying to take over Cuba, his ancestral home, forever. And, there's a big, let me just tell you that in the Cuban American community down here, your bona fides are established depending upon when your family emigrated or were forced to leave the island. If your family was forced to leave because of Castro and the revolution, you have a certain higher status in this culture than if you came before. If you were part of the prior president and made a lot of money with the prior president and got out before, you're on a lower social rung than if you came out because you were forced out after. That still goes on down here from a political infrastructure that's controlled by the Cuban American community.
I mean, Trump it's always a PR move, right? It's always a PR move.
Yeah.
Who even knows if they're going to legally be able to actually physically bring him here? Yeah, no, that's a fascinating take there. And hopefully he doesn't get as many points as he's trying to get out of that PR move.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's going to be, I want to see the polling on that, but he knows he's cratering in Miami. For people in Idaho who are wondering, why are we indicting Raul Castro at this late date and bringing him to justice? It has as much to do about bringing somebody to justice for a horrendous act of shooting a plane out of a sky and killing people as it does for the political side, a byproduct of shoring up failing numbers in Miami. And of course, we sit at that politics and law intersection, so we wanted to bring it to you there. You want to talk about Judge Bates and the Public Presidential Records Act and what's happened there? Can you frame that issue?
Yes. Well, I think that Trump is taking a cue, knowing that Nixon should have destroyed those tapes way back when, because as we know, the tapes are what brought down Richard Nixon. By the way, Trump's approval ratings is about where Richard Nixon was when he was forced to resign. That's how bad those poll numbers are. Well, rather than just, take his files and have the FBI come after him again, Trump has decided to have the DOJ say, well, presidential records should just not be a thing anymore. And that because as president, he has this absolute power over the executive branch, that he cannot be told by Congress to preserve the records. That's what the DOJ said to the court. They're trying to basically make it so Trump could either destroy them or just put them in his briefcase and take them this time wherever he wants. The Judge Bates issued a preliminary injunction saying, no, you have to preserve all of the records. This litigation is still going to be moving forward, but right now they have to follow the Presidential Records Act. And it is also, I thought, indicative of the time that this preliminary injunction also said that the presidential and vice presidential team within the White House cannot use Signal, chat, or WhatsApp for their official communications, because as we know, Hegseth has infamously used it. And this is one way that executive branch can just do a runaround around the Presidential Records Act, is use an app that auto deletes. So the preliminary injunction also making it clear there that they're not supposed to be doing that. But, it's the office of the president this is you are a public servant. That job, the powers is being loaned to you by the American people. Unfortunately, too many people gave that power to Trump to be loaned. But it is stunning to me. The No Kings rallies, some people said they thought maybe the No Kings was too cutesy of a term or something like that. But Trump, in so many ways, just really does want to be a monarch, between the putting his face on the passports. I don't know if anybody hasn't renewed their passport yet. Go do it quickly, because his face is going to be on it, and you're going to be stuck with his face on the passport. To him signing the $100 bills along with the Treasury Secretary, to him not wanting any record of his communications. He wants to change the office of the president. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court has given into him so many times. How much they're willing to put. I mean, this is what we talk about on our Supreme Court Unprecedented show all the time. They pushed back when it came to the Federal Reserve and the tariffs, because of course it's money and they care about the money, and they don't push back when it comes to labor rights and that the board governing the labor rights. But this is the tension that exists. And really, it's not just Trump. It is Project 2025. It is the Republicans. It is that movement that wants to make the president all powerful in this co-equal branch of government. So for today, Judge Bates at least issuing this preliminary injunction saying, I don't care what you say, Department of Justice, your interpretation of the Presidential Records Act, you have to follow it while this litigation proceeds.
Absolutely. And probably beyond the litigation. So stop burning everything and stop shoving it down the toilet and eating it and whatever else they were doing during the first Trump administration. It's the people's papers. It'll always be the people's papers. And no, it's not. I don't think it's going to be found to be a violation of the separation of powers, that Congress has created the National Archive and required that the National Records Act and the National Archive, and required that the presidential papers end up there. All they're doing is directing where the repository is, and that the documents end up there. I think ultimately even the Supreme Court is going to find that is not a violation of the separation of powers and all of that. When we come back, we're going to talk about the ballroom and other things related to it, and how it may tie back to other things that are important to Donald Trump. But I think it's a big blow to the ballroom. Couple of developments in the ballroom that we should talk about. And but first, we're going to take our last break. We've got the Legal AF podcast on Wednesday nights, on Saturday nights, and now on Mondays at 5 p.m. with Dina Doll and Lisa Graves. We could not have put the crown jewel of our podcast in better hands to carry forward with a third night than Dina and Lisa. So please, you're doing it. We're on our third or fourth show. We'll be doing one on Memorial Day, and everybody should check it out. That's one of the new programming feeds that we have on the Legal AF YouTube channel. So you're going to want to check that out. Speaking of the Legal AF YouTube channel, we could use your help to continue to grow our subscriber base. That's all. People are like, what keeps Legal AF and Midas on the air? It's this. It's the subscriber base. The bigger we are, from a real audience, we're not looking for trolls. We're looking for real audience members that are the vibrant contributors to our community. I'll just give you the math here. That gives us the street cred, that things like the Webby Awards, the views, the comments, the thumbs up, the likes, the reviews, that gives us the street cred to continue to grow, to bring on newsmakers, to get the lawyers and the plaintiffs and the senators and the governors and the newsmakers and the constitutional scholars and all to say, oh yeah, I want to do legal AF. Oh, absolutely. And so we have a YouTube channel that helps support that as well. But we need you to do your part, free subscribe, then hit the button. For instance, I'm going to have the Brendan Ballou for the Public Integrity Project, who's the lawyers for the first filed case against the slush fund, joining me tomorrow. Governor Shapiro, fresh off his unopposed Democratic primary win in Pennsylvania. We need him to win Pennsylvania, and then maybe consider other things in 2028. I don't know. Maybe I'll break some news tomorrow. He's coming on to be interviewed with me. And again, the bigger we get as we're building this channel and this network with our bare hands, brick by brick, then the more variety of content that we can provide. So that's where you could do your part. Substack needs a little love too. You can blow it a kiss. Legal AF Substack. Become a member, a paid member. I do a live report every day, which I think people enjoy. I get over 1,000 people to join me there, and they can talk back to me, and I talk back to them throughout the show. And then content like Dina Doll and me, we do essays all day long and analysis. I post all of the filings, orders, briefs, motions that I use during the day for my hot takes, my videos, all end up under Filings AF. I just want to show people. I want to do a little demonstrative. This is just today. This is, my printer hates me. This is, and I have to print this stuff. Sorry, folks, I'm at that age. This is orders and briefs and settlement agreements and transcripts and all sorts of things that from this comes the videos and the prep and all of that. So just so you know what we're doing there. And then we've got our sponsors. Dina, we got some of our pro-democracy sponsors. They don't gag us. They know what we're saying. They're supporters of the First Amendment and independent journalism, and we'll take a break for them now. If a genie gave me wishes, I would use at least one of them to wish for my cat Chanel to live forever. But since genies don't exist, as far as I know, I feed my cat Smalls. Smalls is fresh, human-grade cat food that does so much more than just feed your cat. It helps them live a full, healthy life. Most cat food out there is made with meat byproducts, cheap fillers, and artificial ingredients. Basically, stuff that isn't great for your cat. Big Pet Food does this because it's cheaper to make. But what they save on cost, your cat pays for with their health. Smalls is different. Their fresh recipes are made with at least 80% animal protein, and they are gently cooked to retain all their nutrients and flavor. They never add fillers or artificial ingredients, and their food is so healthy that 88% of cat parents say that after feeding Smalls, their cats have better digestion, a softer and shinier coat, and more energy to play, because it's actually good for cats. Your cat's health and longevity starts with what they eat. Try Smalls and get 60% off your cat's first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you go to smalls.com/legalaf. Listen to this one last time. That's 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/legalaf. This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, IQ Joe mushroom coffees are the delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel you need to win your day. The ultimate sampler pack, it's a great way to try all IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. All IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. IQ Bar's plant protein bars are the smarter snack choice with plenty of plant protein, tons of fiber, and no added sugar. With over 20,000 five-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all 3. IQ Bar has become part of my daily routine, whether it's starting my morning with IQ Joe or grabbing an IQ Bar when I need a quick, clean snack. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text LEGALAF to 64,000. Text LEGALAF to 64,000. That's Legal AF to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. We are back, and thank you to our pro-democracy sponsors, Dina Doll, Michael Popok, lightning round. No, I'm kidding. Do Rorschach test. I'll say something. You tell me the first thing that pops into your mind.
Back in law school.
Right. First thing that pops into your mind, ballroom. All right. So ballroom, Trump says, why is everybody upset? It's free. It's not free. It's no more free than the $400 million, Qatar, Boeing jet that is being converted for billions of taxpayer dollars into Air Force One. If he lives to get on that plane, I mean that chronologically, I'll be shocked if that thing is ready in time. But the retrofitting, and then he's going to apparently take the taxpayer dollars like a paper airplane and fly away and stick it in the Miami Convention Center hotel and casino library thing that he's building on public dollars, public land. So we got that. And the same guy that said that's free told everybody when he knocked over the East Wing in the middle of the night without a permit that the ballroom's free. Why is everybody complaining? I got 400 million people, $400 million because apparently it's 1.4 billion and you seem to be 1 billion short. So there was a bill that the House originated. I think they feel sorry about that now, in which they said, and then they had the Secret Service guy, Dina, run around and start lobbying Republicans for votes. Well, 220 million of it is to harden the ballroom. Oh, the ballroom's not hardened? I thought the ballroom was supposed to collapse on top of the bunker, and that was part of the security system. Now it needs to be hardened. So hardening, and then there's other threats. Well, you didn't think about those threats before? Maybe because this whole thing got planned on the back of a napkin in the middle of the night. That's why they're doing that now. There's also a Secret Service training. Yeah, that's a good idea. You probably want to get Secret Service trained. So here's the bill, America, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, $1 billion. What happened to that?
Well, it didn't work out. The Senate parliamentarian first said, because of course the GOP just wanted to try to add it to the reconciliation bills. They didn't actually have to have a vote on the record, and the Senate parliamentarian said they couldn't. And now it looks like the GOP is kind of dropping it because it is like a hot potato. It's really unpopular. They've already extremely unpopular going into the midterms. The last thing they want is to put their name on a vote for this ballroom / bunker. As we know, that's the other thing too. They're not really clear about is this money actually going to the existing bunker that is under there? How much of it is that? How much of it is the ballroom? I just think that it's like a perfect metaphor. The fact that Trump knocked it down before having a plan. It is very easy to destroy something. Anybody can do it with a bulldozer, right? Anybody can fire somebody. Like the promise that Doge had about firing all of those air traffic controllers, hundreds of air traffic controllers, because there was supposed to be a modernization of them, the control centers. And so we didn't need as many employees. And so they just fired the people. I'm not hearing anything about some great new technology that's streamlining it. In fact, we're hearing the opposite, right? All these planes with near misses. It's easy to destroy something. It's very hard to build it. But Trump, I think he knocked it down like a day or two after one of the No Kings rallies. He was upset how unpopular he was. He took it out on the American people. He knocked down a historic part of the White House that does not belong to him. And now he can't find funding from it, even with his weakling GOP colleagues, because he keeps lying about how much it is. He keeps lying about why he needs it. He keeps, lying about who's going to pay for it. They try, even with this, assassination attempt where so many people don't even know if it's real or not, that they try to use for this ballroom. The fact is Trump uses Mar-a-Lago ballroom all the time. It is a private ballroom. He doesn't need $1 billion ballroom in order to be safe. The White House is extremely safe as it is. The East Wing, including the East Wing that he had knocked down, was extremely safe. So yeah, for now, at least this is a DOA, as you would say. He cannot get the funding for this very unpopular ballroom, due in part really to him. Him and his lies have made this so politically impossible for the GOP to back, at least for now. if they manage to pull out the midterms, I'm sure they will resurrect it, but they know that they will probably be voted. This would be just another thing that the Democrats would campaign on.
Well, like you said, you're right about that. Look at Iran. As I said, they can train a whole room of chimpanzees to push a button to bomb and do 50,000 bombing sorties. But what was the plan for the 90 million people? What was the plan for the regime change? What was the plan to secure the uranium stockpile? What was the plan? There was none.
Yeah.
Apparently, the plan is every 45 minutes announce that they're either bombing or not bombing, that they're going to bomb. This is the calm before the storm before the calm of the storm before the storm of the calm. And if this is like the parent that doesn't get, the child tunes out because one more time you come home late, I'm going to take away. I'm running out of things to take away. Nobody believes him. Every he has a special talent, Donald Trump. Every world leader that tussles with him, they come out stronger than they were before. Right? At home and globally, and Donald Trump comes home shrunken and weak and tail between his legs. Example, Putin coming out of Alaska and the Ukraine war, or China, or Iran's regime, the Revolutionary Guard. Okay, they're all sitting pretty. I mean, there's some. And what is just to touch on Iran for a minute? And what's Donald Trump going to end up doing to declare victory? He's going to end up entering into a treaty that looks exactly like Barack Obama's treaty about the nuclear stockpile. Almost exactly the one that Trump shit all over, with one difference. We're now going to be on the hook for the billions of dollars of reparations to help Iran rebuild its navy and its electrical grid and all the other things, and its oil infrastructure and all the other things that we bombed. So we have to pay because big baby president wanted to be a wartime president to try to shore up his failing domestic numbers and domestic policy. I know, I'll start a war. And, without, as you said, without any planning whatsoever. And we're lucky. I mean this without too much tongue in cheek. We're lucky that he didn't knock over the entire White House. Because under his same approach, the White House is insecure. It's shabby. It's insecure. I'm not comfortable there. I live there now. Knock it all down. Put a trailer outside. We're putting up a 30-story building, ladies and gentlemen, and you can't do a thing about it. Just because it was the East Wing, which they still in filings act like is still there. The refurbishment of the East Wing. You can't demolish the East Wing and then say you're refurbishing it at the same time. Okay. If you hired a contractor to refurbish your house and you went out for lunch and the whole thing was torn down, you'd be understandably upset because that wasn't the refurbishment that you want. He could have torn down the whole White House. We're lucky that he didn't. And you're right. When he gets petulant, like, people don't like me. What can I do now? Bulldozer. He did the same thing at the Kennedy Center. Changed the name, slapped his name over John F. Kennedy's, which was in the moment, in the year after his assassination, with a country literally mourning. They built the Kennedy Center and put his name on it in testament to John F. Kennedy. And then he just typed his name on top of it. And then when nobody showed up, and all of the ballet troupes and opera and Broadway and stars and singers and this and that canceled. And it was going to be like Lee Greenwood every night. I don't know what this is supposed to be. I don't know. It's just like Lee and MMA fighting, Dana White production. He said, I got an idea. I'm going to tear down the Kennedy Center. Right? He's like tearing down the Kennedy Center because it leaks. Really?
I know his obsession with he wants the respect of Kennedy, but he's trying to bully his way and buy it instead of earn it. And then he's obsessed with Obama. He could not handle that deal in Iran. And like you said, we're going to be worse off, but probably end up with a similar deal. And same with the healthcare credits. I mean, it's stunning to me. Speaking about stunning, okay, that's going to be my word of the day here. The fact that the Republicans are not even talking anymore about a replacement for all those healthcare credits under Obamacare that they allowed expire on January 1st. I mean, they don't even talk about putting in a proposal. So many Americans had their premiums skyrocket only because Trump hated the fact that the Obamacare was so incredibly popular. If you notice, they started calling it the Affordable Care Act because they didn't even want to give Obama the credit anymore to include his name. In the beginning, they called it Obamacare because they thought it was a dig. But now that it's so popular, they're starting to call it the Affordable Care Act. So I'm going to keep calling it Obamacare. But they just let that expire. So many people are without health care. They're going to get diagnosed with cancer. They're going to have heart attacks. And they're going to have no health insurance. And that also needs to get drummed in here as we're leading up to the midterms, because it's another example of it's very easy to let something that took so long to negotiate and put into law expire. Anybody can let something expire. But they have zero discussion. It seems to be they have moved on completely from the fact that they increased healthcare premiums by thousands of dollars across the country because they can't build anything. They can only break it.
Yeah. I mean, I like that. This is an administration that is in a race to the bottom at every level, is trying, I guess, to prove to the American people the age-old question, how low can you go? We're watching the Department of Justice and Todd Blanche. How low can you go? We're watching failing polling numbers for Donald Trump. How low can you go? I mean, we're not talking about an administration that's on the ascend, that is getting its footing, that is, had a rough patch in the very beginning, but is now making a vital connection with the American people. Nobody believes that. They're quite the opposite, right?
Did you see Jeff Bezos just gave an interview? He gave an interview to
he says he's better.
He said he was more mature this term.
Well, he was a 2-year-old in the first administration, and now he's 2.5. But no, but Bezos.
He's so much more dangerous this time around.
Bezos is a bootlicker. Did I say butt? Boot or butt? boot butt liquor from way back. He's the one that gave Melania Trump $40 million for a documentary, has billions of dollars of Amazon computing contracts with the government. I don't know if he went. Did he go to China? Wasn't he there? Wasn't he one of the dozen? Yeah. Right. And he invites all the Trumpers to his wedding, to what's her name. He is so far up Donald Trump's backside. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So Bezos there should be a warning label when people like this I am not an independent thought or commentary. I am so conflicted with my business interests. This would go too long on the lower third, but I am so conflicted in my business interests that you cannot trust a word that I say. And you know what? Where did you see that? Where was that interview?
It was on C-SPAN.
Right. And and God damn it, C-SPAN. Oh, no, CNBC. And CNBC, according to our producer, it had a C in it.
Okay. Something with a C.
Something with a C. CNBC, of course, doesn't do their job as journalists. They should have said, well, let's be frank here.
Yeah.
You do have a little bit of a conflict, do you not? Because you're basically in business with Donald Trump and his entire family, and you were just on the plane to China, and now suddenly you're declaring that he is a competent administrator. How do you think the American people should view? What lens through which should they view your comments? But nobody has the balls to say that. That's why people come on Midas Touch and on Legal AF, because this is our new bumper sticker. We have the balls to say it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Dina. Did I make you blush?
No. Okay.
I didn't mean to.
I'm not,
I've seen you swear like a sailor.
Have you?
No.
I don't swear, but I'm not exactly gonna be. Right. I don't care if you do.
You're not a hothouse flower either.
Exactly. I've been around the block.
Been a top lawyer for too long for that.
Exactly.
But thanks for being here. Thanks for stepping in for KFA. So many different ways to support our show. You already know. You know the check. People in our audience can do the checklist for me. right? Put it in comments. 1, subscribe to Legal AF YouTube channel. 2, while you're there, do Midas Touch 2. 2, go over to Legal AF Substack, become a member or even a paid member. That's 2. 3, support our sponsors. That's really important, right? And then help the show, because that gives us the street cred that we need. Continue to put 5-star reviews over on the audio podcast platforms, comments, views, bring people to the next episode. That all helps as we continue to grow our pro-democracy brand for you. And I really appreciate it. Dina, always a pleasure. You're going to be on with me for Unprecedented.
Wow.
Which is our Supreme Court show. We might have, who knows, on Friday, we might have some new unprecedented Supreme Court droppings that you and I can unpack. And then you're going to be on Memorial Day Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern time with Dina. Oh, look at this. Look at the graphic. Woo! Monday Night Live, Legal AF with Lisa Graves and Dina Doll. How are you? That looks fantastic. And you'll be doing that. We'd like everybody to join that. Get in on the ground floor.
Yes.
6 years in the making, but the first new episode, first new chapter night of Legal AF has now been launched, and get in on the ground floor while you can. So thanks for everybody being here. Love the energy that we had tonight, and shout out to the Midas Mighty and the Legal AFers.